Hi, greetings, Karen Clay and Somatical Minding. Thanks for joining me. Sorry I missed last week, my microphone died. So before we start, I want to show you how you're going to need to set up. We're going to be working against a wall with our butt right up next to the wall. So let me show you what you need room for. You need enough of a wall for your legs to go straight up and enough of a floor for your half of your body to be on. The other thing that I would like you to have nearby is either a bolster that's about 3 inches, or just a rolled up beach towel or a bath towel that's also about the same size. So go get that and then come back and we'll take a look at the hip joint. So this whole series is a series on the hip joint and how we can use our hip joints in a way that allows us to use gravity and ground force to our advantage so that being upright is easy, being tall is easy, being spacious is easy. So let's take a look here. These are the femur bones or the thigh bones. This is knob here. It's called the trochanter. That means to run in Latin. So the thigh bone doesn't go straight up to the hip joint. It goes up and inward. See that angle? And then if you take a look right here, there is the ball of the femur, and there is the socket. And you'll notice that if you look from the front, the socket is actually pointing forward, but also sideways. And what do you think the mystery of that is? It's because the force from the ground that comes from 2 feet somehow has to get joined into one spine. So there's this elaborate shape, this curved shape in the pelvis that takes the weight that's coming in this direction, the ground force, swirls it around the basin of the pelvis so the weight can meet the sacrum and go on up the spine. And the deal with the hip joint is that it's a very flexible joint, especially in the front. We can go way up, we can go back some. And the femur can move in the hip joint. It can move backward relative to the hip joint, forward relative to the hip joint, high relative to the hip joint, low. And that all will affect how we transfer weight and how we grab those rebound forces from gravity in the form of ground force. The pelvis can also be behind the femur or in front of the femur or to the side of the femur or too far over towards the femur. And so all of those things will play in how we're able to capture that ground force. So let's begin. I'd like you to begin in standing so that you can have a way to measure what this lesson has done for you. So please just come and stand and just take a minute to notice your feet. And then very easily shift forward and back, just a little bit, 1 inch forward and 1 inch back, not to the point that you're losing your balance. And you're not looking to see how far you can go. You just want to find out, what does it feel like when I move backwards? Do I like that better? Or do I like it better when I move forward? Which direction gives me more sense of lightness, more sense of support? And then do the same to the right and to the left. A 1 inch shifting right and left. Do I get taller on one leg and shorter on the other? And then we'll come back to that at the end of the lesson so you can see what you've experienced scientifically. So please come over to your mat. Let me show you how to get your butt next to the wall. So the easiest way to do that is to roll yourself into a fetus with your butt against the wall. And then you just kick your legs up sideways and you're there. I'll move a little further away. So get yourself situated. Now, if you immediately feel uncomfortable here, which you might experience that your legs are tight or your butt is tight, that just something doesn't feel right. In that case, I'd recommend that you put a bolster under your pelvis. So that would look either like a foam bolster so that you can have a little bit more flexibility in your low back, or this other one. I personally don't need it, but you're the only one that knows if you need that or not. So don't follow what I do, follow what's right for you. So here we are, and we have this, excuse me, unusual relationship to gravity where now we can really feel the force through the legs going into the hip joints because gravity is allowing us to really feel the weight of the legs. And the legs probably weigh 15 pounds each. So that's a good amount of weight that you can now feel sort of driving into that narrow hip joint and then around to the back of the pelvis, the sacrum. And so just take a moment to see if you can tune into what you just saw in the skeleton. Maybe you want to find your trochanter, the bony bone on the outside. And then maybe you want to find the top of your pelvis with your hands, like you're putting your hands on your hips. And then maybe you want to find where you think your hip joint is. You know, that trochanter is going up and inward towards the midline at an angle. So it means your hip joints are just right above your pubic bone. So please start by folding your knee, your right knee, and drawing your heel towards your butt. Let the sole of your foot reach the wall whenever you're comfortable. And then slide it back up. Now you don't have to go as far as I'm going. And you want to go only as far as is comfortable and easy, because this is not about achieving something. It's about sensing what is. And it's not about pleasing the teacher. It's about pleasing yourself. So you're going to continue to slide that leg down and feel what happens to that side of your pelvis and your low back. So can you feel a change in the right side of your pelvis and the right side of your low back when you flex your knee to your chest? So you can repeat that as many times as you want and pause your phone when you're ready. Then you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Right away, what's the difference between the first side and the left leg? So some of us have little glitches in how our femur sits in our socket, and sometimes that means we get a little pinch in the front of the hip. And part of what this lesson is going to do is help you to seat your the head of your thigh bone into the socket in a deeper, more comfortable place. So please don't go any further than is comfortable. And if you need to support the knee with the hands, you can pretty much just rest your elbow on the floor and rest your thigh in your hand, so that you don't have to go any further than is comfortable. But you may also notice on one side that your knee has to be a little further outward rather than staying straight parallel when you bring it in and flex it. So now let's take one leg down, and then let's take the other leg down. Now feel what happens to your pelvis. What happened to the curve in your lower back? Now take the leg back up and the other leg back up. Notice what happened. Your weight probably moved a little bit lower on your pelvis in the direction of your tail. When you draw one heel towards the butt and the other heel towards the butt, you'll notice that you roll up on your pelvis and your low back flattens. So just experience the difference between those two as you go back and forth between those two. And then let's leave that, and please simply with the right heel, roll the right heel outward so the foot is like a duck foot, and then roll the heel inward so the foot is pigeon-toed. And do that many, many times very slowly, seeing if you can imagine what your femur is doing in the hip socket. It's turning like a doorknob. It's spiraling inside the joint. So this sensation will help you locate where your hip joint really is as you go in and out. And notice if your pelvis changes position or shape between rolling in and rolling out. It may not. It doesn't matter. Okay, try the left side. So you roll it in and you roll it out. Don't expect the left side to be like the right side, so don't push it if it doesn't go as far. Or this may be the side that has an easier time of it. Just let it be what it is. The magic of the work is you registering how things are now, not in trying to change them, in becoming a connoisseur of sensations, like being a connoisseur of wines, those very subtle differences. So now let's roll both toes to the right and both toes to the left. So now you will definitely feel movement across your pelvis, right and left, and you also might feel a difference in which pelvis flattens into the ground and which side of the pelvis rolls away from the ground. Good. So back and forth like that. And then both toes to the right, you're going to draw your heels down, and then you're going to switch your toes to the left and draw your heels down, and then you're going to switch your toes to the right and draw your heels down, and then back up the same way. So you're doing ski turns. You're skiing to the right and making a turn, and skiing to the left and making a turn, skiing to the right and making a turn, and back up to straight. And you can try that as many times as you wish, back and forth, feeling that the pelvis might actually be turning slightly. So why don't you try this? Why don't you stay in your comfortable low position, wherever that is for you, and turn on both heels to the right. Feel what happens to your pelvis, and then turn on the left and feel what happens to the right pelvis. So can you feel how changing the legs in the hip joint is actually changing the pelvis as the pelvis starts to rock in response to the hip joints being one rolled in and one rolled out. Now, just for fun, would you let your head roll with your knees and see what that feels like? And then the next time your knees are to the right, stay there and turn your head to the left. And now knees left, head right. Knees right, head left. So you're pivoting on your heels, moving your toes on the floor, rolling your head opposite the directions your knees are going. Or you could say rolling your head towards your heels. Okay, good. Draw your legs up again. Please roll yourself to your side and come up. Find your way up to standing slowly and comfortably, taking your time. And then please come back over to a position where you can stand and sense once again what's happening with your feet and your hip joints. So you may notice right away that you're standing slightly differently. Maybe you have more of a sense of the inner line of the leg instead of the legs being out here, that you can feel how the leg has this narrow connection. And as you move forward and back through your feet, just like you did before, just 1 inch forward and 1 inch back, you may notice that you're more receptive to the ground. You may notice that you're moving slower. You may notice that you're more curious about what happens when your weight shifts back and forward. And this time what I'd like you to do is make the movement forward and back smaller and smaller until you reach a middle point that feels like the sweet spot for you. And then do the same again to the right and to the left. Just a little hovering. Which leg do you prefer to stand on? Maybe you now recognize, oh, I stand more on my left leg than I do on my right in general. I didn't even know that. And then make that smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until you find the sweet spot. We'll stop the lesson there. I'm going to say goodbye, but I'd like you to take a walk around your space before you go back to your day. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Please do subscribe if you haven't and support me. Thank you.